You're listening to the Tony Steuer Podcast, where Tony interviews financial literacy advocates who are changing the conversation on money, so you can catch up on the latest trends and ideas in the world of financial literacy and education.
Welcome to the Tony Steuer Podcast presented by Paperwork. I'm pleased to be joined today by Mariela Garcia. Mariela is a certified financial coach and life coach, as well as an educator and the owner of Money and Wellbeing. Mariela, welcome to the Tony Steuer Podcast. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks, Tony. So excited to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you and look forward to learning more about you and your work. So as we get started, what is your origin story? How did you get started in financial wellness?
So I was in my 20s and I had just finished college. And I was going out every day, living a YOLO life, and which is you only live once. And I was saying yes to everything. And, I didn't have any responsibilities. And next thing you know, a few years later, I have a baby, I'm married, and I am in big debt. I have $30,000 total. 20,000 was student loans, 10,000 was high interest credit card debt. And I just realized that I wasn't happy. I was really sad. I was really depressed. And I just was tired of feeling that way. Every check was gone because it was all going to bills. And we were in an apartment, so I didn't have a mortgage. My bills weren't high. It was just that I had all this debt, So I was driving a lot during that time for work. And I just came across, you just run out of things to listen to. You get tired of music. And I came across a radio show by Dave Ramsey. And I just started listening to that on my drives. And that was the first time I had ever heard anything about personal finance. I had never, I wasn't taught anything about personal finance growing up at home, at school. So I really didn't know how to get out of my situation. So I went home and I told my husband about his philosophy, and it was really extreme, but we were just really also kind of tired of being in our situation. So we stopped going out. We did everything we had to do that Dave Ramsey said. And we got out of debt in 2 years, which was fast. It was $30,000. So, after I got out of debt, I was like, okay, how am I going to stay out of debt now? And so I started learning. I learned that there were other financial experts, and so I started reading books and I started just learning, watching YouTube videos. And so I just got a passion for it, and I did have some hiccups, we did get back into debt here and there as we were like learning still, but it's been like over 10 years now that we haven't been in debt, and we're just living this amazing life of freedom, it feels like, just by not being in debt. But that's what started it for me, and I never turned back. So then people started asking me for advice on personal finance. And so eventually I just was like, how can I do this for a living? And I just quit my job last year and I got licensed, not licensed, I got certifications in personal finance. And then I learned that personal finance through my experience and in helping other people, I learned that personal finance wasn't really about money. It was more about behavior and our experiences. So I did a life coaching certification as well. So that's what I have now. And I love it. I wake up every day super excited I either write about personal finance, I do coaching, or I'm teaching classes on personal finance, because I want people to to understand that situations are not permanent. Everybody gets into situations that we end up regretting maybe, but it doesn't mean we have to stay there and stay stuck. There's solutions.
I love that. That is so powerful. Situations are not permanent, and that we have
Mm-hmm.
control to make adjustments. And I really loved what you said, living a life of freedom with no debt. That
Yeah.
is so powerful for people, is because, we oftentimes feel that our debt is really, and it is a weight that we
Mm-hmm.
carry around. We worry about paying it off. We worry about, incurring more debt and everything. So that's just so powerful. So, what really, let's go a little bit deeper on that. It's that life coaching is, how did that really click in for you, as you were thinking about it, because Dave Ramsey, is all about the dollars and the budgeting. And, as you mentioned, your methods can be a little harsh.
Yeah.
When did you make that connection that, you needed to really look at that subjective and softer component?
Yeah. So I felt with Dave Ramsey, when you think about it, what's missing there is really the compassion, the heart. I think sometimes there can be a bit of shaming with,
Mm-hmm.
like your situation, like you were dumb, like I feel sometimes that's how I felt, I felt a lot of shame. And I think you don't need to feel that. And I think that's where the life coaching comes in, because I think you just help people. Maybe you got in debt because it was just, you had no choice at the time, that was your way to survive. And with life coaching, you help people, you ask those questions so that they can figure out for themselves, like, well, it was the only way my baby and I were going to get food. And then you help
Mm-hmm.
them realize there's nothing wrong with that, like we all face hardships. And if we don't have community, if we don't have other things in place, then maybe credit cards are the only choice. And there's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing, you should be proud that you had something to turn to. So I think with life coaching, that's what it helped me realize, just more the human aspect. Like, let's dig in a little bit there. What was going on in your life at that time? Where are you now? And also, like, feeling aspect, what do you want to feel? Why is it that you want to be out of debt? Why is it that you want a higher paying job? And
Mm-hmm.
helping people understand that the choices you're making are for your well-being and not because of societal expectations or anything else.
That's great. I think that's so important that people go beyond that, and to, like you mentioned, is, if you've made the financial decision to do something, there's no reason to be ashamed of it. You made that decision. It's about, like, okay, well, how do you move forward and maybe make a different decision in the future? And there is a lot of money shaming going on, so with that said, is how can people start to have a positive relationship? Why is it important to have a positive relationship with money?
I think because we need to focus, we all want to feel good. When we feel good, we're good to other people, we're good to ourselves. And we have just a clear mind, like we're more
Mm-hmm.
intentional also. And yeah, like the way we get to a positive relationship with money is just, hey, let's forgive whatever we're angry at, whatever we're maybe our parents didn't teach us about money. Okay, well, they probably didn't know any better.
Mm-hmm.
Which is in most cases, like 99% of the case, that's what it is. They just really didn't know, so let's just forgive, and because when we do that, then we can focus on, okay, so what do I want now? How do I want to feel with money? I want to look at it in a positive way. So let me learn, let me educate myself so I can make better choices with my money.
That's great. And I think you said something really important about that is, to be good to yourself and to, treat yourself gently with these decisions is, I think that's the other thing. We're very hard on ourselves, but yet there was no opportunity for us to learn something because we learned so much from our parents. But if our parents don't have a healthy relationship with money, as we're not going to have the tools and resources to have a healthy relationship with money, especially if we don't learn about it in school, which is true for most people. Most people learn nothing about money, practical money skills, in school. So that's fantastic. One of the other things you talk about that really impresses me is talking a lot about values. And I think values are so important is, why does identifying your values and priorities help people with their money?
Because when we know to me, when I don't have things in place, like I feel like I think of values, priorities, I think of like a business, right? Like anywhere you work, any business, like your business, my business, we have, a mission, we have systems in place in order for our business to be successful. Like those are the first things we focus on as we're building it, and I think every home needs to be thought of in the same way. We need to think of it as, a business sounds very formal, but in hindsight, like what's behind that, like what it takes to build it is crucial. Every home needs, like, what do we value as a home? When people look at our home, just like when you look at your business, when you look at a certain business, okay, you could tell what they value, So when people look at our home, what do we want them to see? Like, as far as what we value. And then you can tell that by like how you spend your money. And then your priorities and your goals. I feel like every home should always be working towards financial goals. In my experience, whenever we have no financial goals, is always a time, like I said, we had hiccups when we fell back in debt. It was when we look back on those, it was like, you know what? We haven't had any goals for 2 years. So what happens every time we don't have any goals? We get in debt. We always get in debt. So now knowing that, it's like, okay, let's always have goals that we're working on. And it could be little things. It could be like, you know what? We are going to go, anything that's tied to money. Like, we really value the outdoors as a family. We value camping, that's when we all have a great time. So we are going to have a camping trip every year, and that's a money goal right there. You need money to plan the trip. So it's really, to me, it's really what defines you, and it's what gives you a purpose. With your family, with your home. And then once you have your values in place and your goals, you're always going to say, okay, well, we're going to spend, like, there's always wants, we're surrounded by just people selling us stuff all the time. And there's new phones every year. So of course we're going to say we want this. But again, so now that you have your values in place, okay, does that purchase align with our values? Do we need a new car, right now when our car is working? And, is that part of our values? Like, to always have like a new car? No, it's not. So we don't need that right now. So it's a lot easier. It makes it easier to like make decisions. I feel like when you have these things in place, your values, your priorities, making decisions, like nobody's going to throw a tantrum, there's none of that. Because you're like, you're right. That is not something we value this year. And your values change, which is another thing people need to be okay with. Every year, I would say like that's a good time. Every year, reevaluate your values, reevaluate your priorities. And it's okay if like now you do value having a nice car. That's perfectly fine.
I like that. Well, one is recognizing that things change,
right?
And your goals are going to change. And I think, going back to what you said at the beginning, I think that's really powerful to think of your financial life like a mini business. And, businesses have goals, they have priorities, they have values, how principles of how they conduct their business. And it's not just about the numbers. The numbers, of course, are super important, but it's about more is like, what are we going to manufacture as a business? Now granted, as a family, we're not manufacturing anything, but, you have your inflows, you have your outflows and your goals. And, how are you going to reach your goals that are in line with your values. So, with your family, that's super important. You guys want to go camping every summer. So how are you going to manage towards that goal and make everything else work around it? If that's your number one priority. And, and that priority, next year you may decide, hey, I want running water. I want a nice hotel room.
Right. Or I'm too old to sleep on the floor. I want an RV.
That happened to us. We're just like, we're getting too old for camping.
You know what? We're getting there, but I still have little ones and they love it. So I've committed to like when they're 10, to the age of 10. Once they're 10, we're going to reevaluate that.
Yeah, that's what happened to my wife and I. Our son's a teenager. We're like, we're done. It's great to take him camping. We went with 2 or 3 other families every year, and and that was a lot of fun for the kids. They could just run around and burn marshmallows at night. And
I mean, they just love it. I mean, you wake up and you're in a playground every day for a few days, however long you're there. So who's not gonna love that except adults?
Exactly.
Who are late parents, older parents.
Yeah, that's still nice. So, one of the things you talk a lot about is Coast Fire. And, can you tell us about what is Coast Fire and how can people achieve it?
Yeah, so Coast Fire is when you start saving early and you reach a point where you have a good amount, and you realize, hey, you know what, I can actually stop investing now for retirement, because with this amount that I have, it's going to keep growing because of compound interest. So there's calculators online that you can use. They're everywhere. I think they're called like retirement. I think they're called retirement calculators, honestly. And then you just put like, if I have, let's say 150,000 or 100,000, and I think it's going to grow, the average, like all stocks grow, like the stock market, I think is like 6%, 7% on the low end. So you just put in 7. And then if you have 20 more years until you think you're going to use that money, then you put in 20 years and it'll tell you how much you have if you don't touch it at all, either by contributing or taking out any money. But you also have to take in other factors too. I don't really like right now, there's so many numbers being thrown out about how much we need. And I think everybody's situation is so different. So and it's daunting, right? Because it's like 1 million, 2 million, that you need. And it's like, okay, like that just seems like I'm never going to get there, but maybe you will, maybe you won't. But do you really need that much money? What is your life going to look like when you're older? Are you living your life now and you just plan to relax later? Then you don't need a lot at all. But anyways, with Coast Fire, so that's what it is. It's when you start saving early. So this is one of those things where I would say, because a lot of times people say, oh, I'm too late, when it comes to personal finance, and they just feel like they want to give up. I would say Coast Fire is maybe the only thing that maybe you do need to start a little earlier. I started in my late 20s, and it really, again, not knowing much about personal finance, I just was like, the company said it at a meeting, and they said, oh, we match you 7%. And I'm like, what does that mean? And I just said, it sounds good. Let me do it. And that's probably the best decision I made when I was young, because like I said, I was just I didn't know anything. So I didn't know what to do, but that was the best decision I made, to start putting money into my 401k. And then next thing you know, 10 years later, like just investing at the match, I had like over $100,000. And then I was like, whoa, like, okay, I think, so then that's when I started getting into the calculators. But like I said, you have to look at what else you're going to have in place. Do one of you, if you're in a relationship, are one of you going to get a pension? If you're single, don't ever want to get married, then is that enough for you? Are you going to have a paid off home? Do you have kids? What do you have going on in your life? Do you have other forms of passive income, rental income? Because that lowers how much you're going to need. Really. Yeah. That's another factor too. But it's really just saving a good amount, because with compound interest, you get more benefit when you have a good chunk of money. Like, it's not going to really make a difference if you just have 5,000 and you're like, that's it, I'm going to stop. You're not going to be able to have that money grow fast or a lot. You need like, you just need a lot more than that. I would say, I don't know, I think 100K probably, at least, to say, okay, I'm going to stop because I have other things in place and I'm just going to let my money grow. The more you have, the more it grows.
Yeah, no, that's important. Is, I think you said a couple things that people need to really focus on. Is one, it's never too late.
Right.
That's okay. But the earlier you can start, the better. But those things are not, they're not the same thing as, if you start later, that's okay. But still, today is the best day to start, I think, is the takeaway. Because the longer time your money has to work with compounding interest, the more it's going to grow. And I think, that's so important, is for people to recognize that compounding interest allows them to save less for retirement in the future. Because so I didn't say that very well, but you want to save more now than later. But it's not as extreme as pure FIRE, which is financial independence, retire early. So, is that part of the attraction for you?
I'm sorry, what?
Is that
you
part
said
of the
a trigger
attraction
word
to
for
you?
me.
Oh, no, that's okay. That's what I was just going to ask you about, is, is that part of the attraction for Coast FIRE, because it's a little more realistic for people?
I think so. Yeah, I think, and I've heard you say too, that I think you don't believe in anything that's going to make you sacrifice anything in your life right now. There's ways to build wealth without giving your life up, right now. So I think Coast FIRE is one of those things. And I always tell people who have said, I'm not in a position to start. And I say, you do not miss that money, because it comes out of your check. You don't even think about it, So I always say, if you're working anywhere and there's a match on your job for 401k, like, don't think twice, like, run to HR, fill out that paperwork and get started, because it's just, to me, it's the easiest way to get started as a beginner. And you don't see the money, and there's tax incentives. There's so many reasons why that's the best way to start. But you're right. I do think that's a very realistic and comfortable way of pursuing any sort of FIRE.
Definitely. Yeah.
I
Do
love
things
Coast
with
FIRE.
moderation.
Yeah. And I love Barista FIRE too. That's another one where, it's not so extreme. You have money saved. You don't want to work a stressful job anymore. Because, anybody that's working right now, like just a full-time job, I haven't talked to anybody who's just not exhausted. Everybody's tired. So even if you want to break, Barista FIRE, Starbucks, I think they named it because Starbucks offers like health insurance if you're working part-time. So a lot of people who need health insurance go work somewhere where they can work part-time and relax a little bit, take a break. Because they have some savings, right? They have some savings, they have investments that they can fall back on. It's not enough for them to completely quit their job and have no income. They still need it, but that's why they're going to go work, but work at a place where they can leave work at work, come home, relax. So those are the two FIREs that I'm okay with.
Definitely. Well, I've sort of got my own modified version of FIRE. I retired as an insurance consultant a couple of years ago as a litigation consultant, and it was great work and it paid pretty well, but it was stressful. I was consulting for attorneys and for, wealth managers, and, so it was a lot of stress. And, so I'm not fully retired, but, I found a second career to continue to bring some income in, where I'd done the bulk of my higher, I guess, earning work. and
You're
asked,
living
and
the flex life, which is what I love, it's just like, because I do believe like working is really good for our health, it's good for our brain, it's good for it gives us that purpose we need, that we all need in life. So, and it could be different for everybody. For some people it's raising their children, for some people it's just different. But I love the idea of the flex life just because you can still work doing something you love, and make your money, however much it is. You can even like figure that out, how much do I need to work in this flex life? But if you're working a job with your name on it, that you love, like they said, it doesn't feel like work. And
exactly.
you'll work anywhere because you just love it so much. You're on vacation and you bring your laptop.
Definitely. Well, we got to talk about the flex life concept a little bit more and get into that. But, I want to make sure that we hit on before we wrap up is, creating more equity in financial wellness. What's different for Latinas with financial wellness? You and I have talked offline about, the gender gap difference in financial education and the ethnicity. So what is different for Latinas? What issues do Latinas face?
Powerful question. Okay. So I think for me, because I think again, Latinas didn't all grow up the same, but I would say for the most part, our culture, and it's changing, and I have 3 girls and I'm definitely trying to change it for them, where you grew up in homes where you are responsible, for everything. You're responsible for the home, the children. There's no really like, can you do it all? It's, you have to do it all. And there really isn't, my mom, and I know a lot of moms from my friends, my cousins, my aunts, they didn't work as much as women are working now. And that was the idea. You work if you want to, because your priority is not work. And now I think women, Latinas are more like, well, let me go back and say what that leads to is just Latinas never really doing anything for themselves because we're taught to always do things for everybody else. So I think now we are starting to, and this is where it's going to make me talk about shame again, because we are starting to want more for ourselves. We want the career. We love our children just the same as our parents loved us, we love our husbands the same, we love our home, but we really desire independence and we desire to make our own money and to be contributors to the household. So that's been hard because there's still those expectations of how are you going to do everything else, if you're working so much. And it's like, and only the women get us that. The men don't get us that. They can work as much overtime as they want. But if we take on a job that demands a lot of our time, then there's assumptions, you don't care about your children. You're lazy because you're hiring somebody to clean your house for you so you can work. So it's not easy. You have to just keep fighting all those things. Yes, I hired somebody. Yes, my kids are staying after school, whatever it takes, for them, for Latinas to be able to get out there. And in addition to that, like statistically, we're still low on like the earning scale because I think women still make 80 cents to the dollar of a man, but that's white women. Latinas and Black women are earning, I believe, 60 something cents to white women, or to the dollar. So there's so much work, and that's kind of like finances where you're just like, wow, like, am I ever going to get to a point where I feel good, So I think that, and for Latinas too, we're raised to to comply, so even putting ourselves in positions, where we can speak up, sometimes it's still hard, for us to speak up. So I think it's progress that we're trying to get into the room, and I thank people like you. And I thank there's a lot of people out there who are trying to create more equity, and provide more visual representation. But I also want people to keep in mind that, we're coming into the room, but we're maybe not ready to take the lead yet, or to but it's going to take time for us to feel comfortable to demand the floor, or we need to build trust, because there's been a lot of throwback to us trying to, like I said, change our own mindset that we are capable and deserving, of making a certain amount of money, of holding a certain position at work. But, there's a lot of things that we're battling in our, within our families and in society, as far as the decisions that we're making, and how people assume that's going to affect or hurt, our children and our household.
Yeah. Well, I think those are all really important things, as you talk about the cultural impact, and people don't really talk about that. But I think one of the other things of course, there's the wage gap, which is horrendous, and as a whole, other very long discussion. But I think part of it too is, it comes down to role models. And that's why I think it's really powerful that you're out here spreading your message, is because, when your daughters look up, is, they need to see somebody who looks like them and talks like them and understands them, to say, this is a role model. I see somebody else who I can identify with, where they're looking at the traditional white male, that they don't have much in common with. And, I think that's so important, is that there's role models across the spectrum, like some of us identify with athletes, for whatever reason, they're not necessarily good role models, but, a lot of people follow them as role models. But that, that there are positive role models across the spectrum, that people can find somebody who they share values with, to get back to and say, okay, well, that person shares my values even more beyond looking like me, is, that this person gets me and gets who I am. And they know what it was like to grow up with your parents not talking about money, and to have those cultural expectations, that the women shouldn't talk about money, or, all the other things that you talk about. So, I think that's so important. That can make a whole nother show, is, I
can. I get it. Yeah, no, thank you for listening. And that was a really good question. And yeah, I tell my girls, like, hey, quitting my job was the scariest thing I've ever done. I don't have any examples that I'm following right now with what I'm doing. I don't know anybody else who has done that, to pursue building a career for themselves, with their name on it, their business. I tell them everything I do right now is so scary, but I told them what I realized. The number one lesson I have learned so far is that doing scary things has built my confidence in so many ways I can't even express, like I'm saying yes to everything. And I get excited now when I'm like, oh, that's scary. All right. Because I know once I do it, it's just going to completely just lift me up. And that's what keeps me going,
Definitely. So, just to wrap up, what is your number one tip on financial wellness?
I think just look at your numbers, and know what you have coming in your house and what's going on, where it's going. And just just analyze it and be like, all right, does this represent me and my values? Where my money is going. Like, I think we need to stop avoiding our numbers. And that's just so powerful in itself, and I feel like that's always when I work with clients and they look at their numbers, I always get the text, oh my God, I didn't know, how much. I think it's so powerful. So, but it's also good. That's part of our wellness journey. Just, hey, let's make sure, because you're saying you don't have enough money, but you're spending everything on this. Is that what you want? And that's what allows the opportunities to create these shifts financially. Like you're tired. Maybe you need to create space for more massages, or whatever it is that's going to make you feel good. Or you think you need so much money, but do you really? Do you really need to stay at this really stressful job that you're losing sleep over? Or, yeah, but we don't know that unless we look at these numbers, our own personal numbers.
Definitely. No, that's powerful. So, Mariela, where can people learn more about you? Where can they reach out and follow you or connect with you?
So I have my website at Money and Wellbeing LLC. And then you can message me through there. I'm also on Instagram, Money and Wellbeing. I have my email and my phone numbers on my website. So yeah, I think that's probably the best place.
Okay, fantastic. And for everybody watching and listening, I'll post links in the show notes so you can connect with Mariela. Mariela, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you, Tony. You're an amazing leader here. You're definitely a male ally for us females in finance, and just, I think, females in general. I'm so happy that we met. And thank you for having me on here. It was fun.
Honored for you to take the time. Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in to the Tony Steuer Podcast. Until next time.